In this segment, we're going to examine the external, internal parts of the heart using a heart model. We're also going to look at blood flow, and we're going to touch on the basics of electrical conduction of the human heart. Now, on the external features, we have the superior vena cava. We also, on the posterior side, have the inferior vena cava, the ascending aorta, the aortic arch, as well as the descending aorta, which continues with the thoracic aorta and the abdominal aorta. Now, on top of the aortic arch, you'll see a trifurcation of arteries. We have the brachiocephalic, the left common carotid, as well as the left subclavian. Now, on also either side, we have the pulmonary trunk bifurcating into the left and the right pulmonary arteries. Inferior to that, we have the left and right pulmonary veins. On either side of the heart, we have the right and left auricles, which are anterior to the heart's atria. We have the right and the left ventricles, the apex of the heart. On the right side, you'll see a sulcus here containing the right coronary artery, this large red vessel, branching off into the marginal artery. On the left side of the heart, you will see this large left coronary artery branching into the circumflex artery. This big blue vein is the great cardiac vein. Now, if we want to look on the interior structures and follow blood flow, deoxygenated blood comes from two sources, the upper and lower extremities of the body. Now, from the lower extremities, it enters the heart on the inferior side through the inferior vena cava. On the top of the body, it comes in through the superior vena cava, entering the right atrium. The blood is held here until the release of the tricuspid valve, bringing the blood into the right ventricle. You'll notice some papillary muscles here in the walls of the ventricle, anchoring the chordae tendineae. That's what keeps the valve from inverting back into the atrium. Once the blood is in the right ventricle, it comes up through the pulmonary semilunar valve, entering the pulmonary trunk. It then bifurcates into the left and the right pulmonary arteries. At this point, the blood is taken into the lungs through the capillary beds, where it picks up oxygen and is returned to the heart via the left and the right pulmonary veins. The blood then enters into the left atrium, travels through the mitral or the bicuspid valve into the left ventricle. Again, you'll see the papillary muscles as well as the chordae tendineae. The blood then travels upward into the aortic semilunar valve, climbing up the ascending aorta through the aortic arch, and goes both through the descending aorta down through the thoracic and abdominal aorta to feed the lower extremities, and also goes through this trifurcation that we mentioned before: brachiocephalic, left common carotid, and the left subclavian. Now, how the heart moves all these valves is through an electrical impulse. Each beat of the heart begins with an electrical signal from the sinoventricular node, also known as the SA node. This is located in the wall in the right atrium. When the heart's right atrium is full of blood, the electrical signal spreads across the cells of the heart's right and left atrium, and the signal causes the atria to contract or to squeeze. Now, this pumps blood through the open valves of the tricuspid and bicuspid or mitral valve into both of the ventricles. This is the P wave on an EKG, and it marks the contraction of the heart's atria. The signal arrives at the atrioventricular node, or also known as the AV node, located in the interventricular septum closest to the tricuspid valve. Now, the right and left ventricles fill with blood. On an EKG, this interval is represented by the start of the line segment between P and Q. The signal is released and moves next to the bundle of His. This is located in the heart's ventricles. From the bundle of His, the signal fibers bifurcate into left and right branches which run through the heart's interventricular septum. On an EKG, this is represented by the Q wave. The signal passes into the Purkinje fibers, spreading quickly across the heart's ventricles. This signals the ventricles to contract. The left ventricle contracts just an instant before the right ventricle contracts. This is the R wave of the EKG. Now, the contraction of the right ventricle is represented as the S wave on the EKG. The contraction of the heart's right ventricle pushes blood through the semilunar valve into the artery of the pulmonary artery, bifurcating into the lungs where it picks up oxygen. The contraction of the left ventricle pushes blood through the aortic semilunar valve and artery to the rest of the body. When the ventricles relax, this is the T wave on an EKG graph. This cycle will continue over and over again for the entire life of the heart.